Sup, guys? Fat Archon here, bringing another 40k review. Today, I'll be going over the Tzeentch Daemons and ranking who comes out on top of the post-Dataslate Chaos Demons Index. Tzeentch is a god that's really grown on me over 10th edition. I used to not really care for him that much, but especially on the tabletop, like, my goodness, is this guy pretty good. If I had to rank all the gods together, I'd probably put, like, Khorne first, Tzeentch should be second, maybe tied with Nurgle, and then Slaanesh should be, like, right behind him, Slaanesh not that much farther behind. Regardless, though, I've had a boatload of success with these guys on the table. They're especially good for, like, scoring, doing actions, secondaries, all that sort of stuff. They have really good shooting, which isn't something we normally have access to. So, like, Lord of Change, he's a boss. Obviously, Soul Grinder, we got probably the best version if you run the Tzeentch version, so there's a lot of things to like be excited about with Tzeentch Daemons. As usual, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. At the very least, if you guys could give the video a thumbs up, at least if you like enjoy the content, that would be much appreciated. Helps the algorithm, gets more eyeballs on the channel, makes me feel better about doing these, so I would like appreciate it if you don't mind hitting that icon. Also, got to send a shout out to all the channel members, so Jason, Matt, Nick, Tim, thank all you guys so much for continuing to support what I'm doing. If anybody else would care to support the channel, I will post a link to my Patreon down below, and of course you can become a member through YouTube as well. There are a few perks that come with it, like I'll help you guys with list creation, any random questions you got, I'm more than happy to help. If I'm being upfront, you guys are welcome, anybody is welcome to leave a comment below, and I will always help to the best of my ability, but of course members, you guys get special treatment. Regardless, I genuinely am really hyped to go over Tzeentch. I've been having so much success with them on the table, so hopefully I can get some good tips out there, give you guys some good ideas on units to run, but it looks like we're going to start off with the humble blue whores. So these guys are pretty spendy, especially for the stat line you're getting. So the stat line is both terrible and it has a good part to it. The terrible is the main stat line. So 6-inch move, only toughness 3, a single wound, 8 leadership, and only a single objective control. So really nothing to write home about there. The good part though is they do have a 4-up invul save. That's actually pretty awesome. That definitely throws off your opponent's calculations. Even if really good firepower melee is going into them, it's not guaranteed to take them out. And that is good, especially when you get the split rule. We'll get to that here in a moment. Now, they do also have range output, which again is pretty interesting for demons. It's 18-inch range, 2 attacks. It does only hit on 4s, only strength 3, but AP 1, 1 damage. That's not really terrible. For the price you're paying, okay, it's not good at all, but the fact that you can reach out and help clear out screens, take out chaff, that sort of stuff, it does have value to it. Technically, they do have melee weapons, but stay out of melee with these guys. They only hit on 5s, strength 3, no AP, a single damage. It's really yeah, definitely stay out of melee if you can. Now, where these guys really start to pop off, they have the infiltrate rule. I've explained a million times, man, how important being able to infiltrate is, especially whether your opponent does or does not have infiltrators of their own. Either way, it's really important. If they don't have infiltrators, that means that you can move block them, screen them out, all that sort of stuff. You can take an objective from the first turn, so that does have value to it. If they do have infiltrators, that means that you can counter them, especially if you deploy first. That means that you can take the prime real estate. And when you have 10 models to work with, that's actually a pretty big deal. You can cover a sizable size of the board. On top of that, they have the split rule. So each time a blue whore model in this unit is destroyed, after the attacking unit has finished making its attacks, as long as these guys are still alive, you roll a d6 for each model. On a 4-up, you add a Brimstone Whore. So combined with the 4-up invul save, that is pretty neat there. Now you do have to remember, these guys are still only T3, so even with the 4-up invul save, it's not guaranteed. It's really matchup dependent. If your opponent has anti-horde, anti-chaff, maybe they fight a lot of orcs or something like that, yeah, chances are they're going to pick them up. Even if they don't, you still only get brimstones on a 4-up, so even if they wiped out 9 of these guys, you'd only get 4 or 5 brimstones. That means if there's another unit set behind them that can also shoot at them, chances are they're still going to die. That said, versus elites, maybe they brought a bunch of anti-tank, anything like that, yes, they will have way more resiliency than normal, so it does make them kind of hard to rank, honestly. Their next ability is Cackling Whores. While an enemy unit of any kind is within 6 inches of this unit, they subtract 1 from their leadership characteristic. That's actually the best version of that ability. It doesn't only work on Battleshock tests or anything like that. No, it affects their characteristic. So if you're fighting CSM or something, they're going to be filling their dark packs more often than usual. So that is pretty powerful. And you can combine it with other Tzeentch units as well. There are ways force Battleshock tests, so I actually like that a lot. Lastly, they have Exploding Whores. So each time they fight, you can select an enemy unit with engagement range. You can select 1 or more Brimstone Whores, and basically you explode them. You roll a die, and on a 4-up, you do a mortal wound to the opponent. That's okay. It really depends, who you're fighting. And maybe you're fighting, Knights or something, Terminators, anything like that, and they're, on their last wound. That is actually pretty clutch, because being able to take out a really expensive model just with a, near, worthless, trash tier, Brimstone Whore, that does have value to it, so it will come up from time to time. That said, you're, hurting yourself at the same time, and it's only on a 4-up, so it's not guaranteed, so kind of iffy there. Overall, the blue whores, genuinely, they are hard to rank. Having the objective control and being an infiltrator on top of it, that does mean that you can do actions from like turn 1. That is pretty valuable there. You can do screening, you can do move blocking. The 4-up invul save can come in clutch from time to time, but they're so freaking expensive, man. 125 points. We're about to get the pink horrors, and they're only, what, 15 more points? So it is like kind of iffy on them. I want to put them like D tier, but they're also like A tier as well. I don't know. It's like really hard to rank. I think what I'll do, I'll probably put them C tier. If you're going mono god, if you're going mono Tzeentch, I do think you still consider bringing them along. That infiltrate rule is just so important, guys. Again, if you have an opponent that does, or even if they don't have infiltrators of their own, it's really important that like you get any and every advantage you can get along the way. So for now, I'll put them in C. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on it, because I know a lot of people do run them. They're cool models too. They're itty-bitty, don't get me wrong, but they're still cool. They're fun to like look at on the table. But let me know what you guys think. For now, though, I'm just gonna put them in C tier. Next up, we got pink horrors. So like I mentioned, these guys are only 15 more points, and for that, you get a way better version of like the split rule, just way better like profile period. So the stat line is similar but better. It's still 6-inch moves, still toughness 3, 4-up invul save, but you have 2 object control and leadership 7. The 2 object control is huge. Don't ever forget that you have the 3-inch deep strike stratagem. You also have Realm of Chaos, so you can just like jump around the board, steal objectives from under your opponent's nose. I think that's really powerful. On top of that, you have 7 leadership. You give them the icon, so that gets boosted to 6 leadership. Then when you're within your Shadow of Chaos, you get +1 to it as well, so you'd have 5 leadership. That means anytime you take a Battle Shock test, you're regening models on top of your split rule. That is insanely strong. Makes them one of, if not the most resilient like battle lines in the game. I actually really like that. On top of that, they have pretty good range output, for demons at least, so Core Skating Pink Flames, 18-inch range, 2 shots, these hit on 3s, strength 4, -1 AP, 1 damage each, so they're basically like boosted bolters. Again, we're talking about demons here. You don't normally have like good range output. This will do fantastic into screens or single wound models. Now, we are talking about Tzeentch. If you're going mono god, you got a bunch of options to choose from, but overall, again, if you're going like mixed god or something, I do think that's actually pretty good. Like I mentioned before, they have a better version of the split rule, so just like before, after the enemy makes their attacks, you roll die for each destroyed model. If it's a pink whore, you get 2 blue whore models. If it's a blue whore, you still get a brimstone whore on top of that. That is insanely strong, man. With your 4-up invul save, like, again, one of the most resilient, if not the most resilient battle lines in the game. Now, they are pretty spendy. 140 points, you're definitely paying for it. That said, I would say these guys are runner-up. Next to Plague Bearers, I think they're one of the best battle lines you could choose. I've done a lot of testing with them and actually been, like, very pleasantly surprised. Certain opponents, just like, it's, like, impossible to take them out. Yeah, for certain opponents, they won't even waste their time because they know it's just going to take, like, their entire army's worth of shooting to deal with these guys. I like them a boatload. They are pretty spendy. That's the one thing holding them back. That's the one thing keeping them from, like, S tier. I don't know, would I put them A+ or A? Ooh, it's hard. I put, like, in between if I could. I think what I'll do A tier. I think that's fair overall. They're pretty spendy. Plague Bearers are debatably better, but if you, especially if you're going mono god, 100,000% you bring at least one of these guys along. Ooh, alright, next up, we got Flamers. These guys are legitimately one of my favorite, like, Tzeentch units. I can't think of a 10th edition Demons list I've written that doesn't bring at least a few of these guys along. They're so good at, like, action plays, secondaries, they're infantry so they can go through walls, they have 9-inch move with the fly keyword, so all that is great. Where they've been exceptional, in my experience at least, is stealing my opponent's objectives. So, like, if they leave a crappy chaff unit on their home field objective, I'm just gonna deep strike these guys in 3 inches away, hopefully on the objective. I'm gonna flame the crap out of them, and all the time it steals it from them right under their nose, so I definitely love that there. On top of that, they have a really good stat line for the cost, so they're only 75 points, relatively cheap. 9-inch move, again with fly, toughness 4, 3 wounds each, and a 4-up invul save. All those together are pretty fantastic, especially that 4-up invul save and 3 wounds each. They're, like, deceptively hard to kill. Bolters aren't going to do it, man. You need, like dedicated firepower to deal with these guys, and again, with that 4-up invul save, it's not at all guaranteed. On top of that, they have Flickering Flames, so this is Ignores Cover Torrent, 12-inch range, D6 shots each, strength 4, -1 AP, 1 damage each, where that's like really like extra good if you run them in max squads. So you run them in squads of 6, that means you have legitimate Overwatch play, and that's something that demons like very much don't normally have access to. Very much like opponents with single wound infantry, they're gonna stay the hell away from these guys for good reason, because you're just gonna blast the hell out of them. In melee, they're not good at all, don't get me wrong, but they're not like horrific in melee either. It's 3 attacks each, does only hit on 4s, but strength 4, damage 1. That's not the worst thing ever. Lastly, they have bounding leaps, so basically they can still fall back and shoot. That's actually really important. Now, sure, you can't do actions anymore like in Pariah Nexus. Unfortunately, that used to be like extremely powerful on them, but still, man, that means you're impossible to tie up. I do actually like that, and with the fly rule, yeah, man, you're like impossible to screen out anything like that. I very much love Flamers. At 75 points, I think they're an auto-include for most lists. I guess maybe you don't like Tzeentch, or they just don't fit your style or something. Sure, I could see you not bringing them there, but me personally, this is my list. I'm doing it my way. I'll put them S tier, dude. Very tip-top of S tier. Again, they're so good at action monkeys. They're really cheap. They have like pretty resilient profile, especially with the 4-up invul save. There's not a single thing I don't like about these guys. You run them either MSU or Max Squad. Everything I love about them. Yeah, S tier. I think that's fair. Next up, we got Screamers. These guys have grown on me so much over 10th edition, especially recently. So they're only 75 points, and they have an amazing stat line for it. So 14-inch move, toughness 4, 3 wounds each, and the 4-up invul save. So for 75 points, you're getting 9 wounds with the 4-up invul save and the 14-inch move. I think that's incredibly good. Something I like about them, even more than Flamers, they make exceptional move blockers. They are so good at move blocking. They also have the Beast keyword, so it's really easy to like sage them behind terrain, just bring them out when you need them. In Pariah Nexus 2, it's ultra important that you're able to get to specific spots of the board and do those actions. With that movement characteristic, and again, being able to move through walls, it's really no problem for these guys. They're one of my better like scoring units. I love them to death. On top of that, they have pretty okay melee, so Lamprey Bites. They have 3 attacks each, unfortunately hitting on 4s, but strength 6, minus 2 AP, 2 damage each. I think that's pretty good, especially for Tzeentch. On top of that, they have a pretty interesting ability, so Slashing Dive. In your movement phase, after they move over an enemy unit, you roll a d6 for each model in the unit, and on a 4-up, you do a mortal wound. So that's not the most ever. Even if you have a maxed out squad, it's only an average of 3 mortal wounds, but from time to time, you will move over like a knight or some other big unit that's on its last legs, and you might be able to finish it off without even having to like attack it. You literally just move over it. Again, I think they're amazing for like actions, secondaries. They're fantastic at like move blocking. They got the beast keyword. There's a boatload of stuff I like about them. I quit running as many flamers. I used to bring 3 flamers in pretty much every single list I ran. Now I bring at least 1 screamer. Often I'll bring 2. It's really like, dealer's choice on how you want to do it. Now, I'm not sure if I put them S tier. I do think they're, like, amazingly good. What I'll do, I'll put them A+. If you guys haven't been running them, like, throw them in your next list. Just see how they do. They work both Mono God or Mixed God. I think they're valid, like, no matter how you spin it. But again, A+ tier, I think that's, like, a great spot for them. Next up, we got Burning Chariot. I think this guy's really efficient for the cost, at least his stat line and heck, his entire profile, honestly. So for 115 points, you're getting 12-inch move, toughness 8, 9 wounds with a 4-up invul save. He also has 3 objective control. He's one of the more like resilient Tzeentch units you can bring along, so I do think that has some value just on its own. On top of that, he has pretty good range output and pretty okay melee. So for range, you got 2 different profiles. Blue Fire is ignores cover, 18-inch range, 3 attacks, strength 9, minus 3 AP, 3 damage each, so that alone is like pretty good. That's great in like Terminators, Elites, even into vehicles with the minus 3 AP and ignores cover, like you should be able to plink a wound off every now and then. On top of that, he has a pretty good flamer too, so again, ignores cover Torrent, 12-inch range, 2d6 attacks with strength 5, minus 1 AP, 1 damage each. That's great into like single wound models, those sort of things. Gives you a legitimate Overwatch play. On top of that, he's no slouch in melee either, so Flamer Mouths. This is 6 attacks, does hit on 4s, but strength 5, no AP, 1 damage each. Not bad, like not great, but not bad either, especially again into single wound models. On top of that, he does get Screamer Bites. So this is an additional 6 attacks, hit on 4s, but strength 6, minus 2 AP, 2 damage each. So even if something like kind of big charges him, he should be able to hold his own, especially with that toughness 8 and the 4-up invul. I think that's pretty clutch. On top of that, he has a really good ability, and this is probably the reason you like consider bringing him along. So, Eldritch Flames. In your shooting phase, after this model is shot, select one enemy unit hit by 1 or more of those attacks. Until the end of the phase, that unit cannot benefit from cover. So that is especially good if you're running these guys as allies. I think Burning Chariot, he's actually like sneaky good if you bring him a CSM or something like that. But even with Demons, especially if you're going Mono God, because Tzeentch does love their shooting, having ignores cover, that's a big deal, especially in 10th edition. Everybody and their mother's getting cover these days. Like, you have to, like, go out of your way not to get cover. Well, this guy helps, like, negate that. At only 115 points, I think he's actually pretty good. I think he's really good. Again, he's one of the more resilient models. 12-inch move, like, isn't bad at all. The attack output, or, like, damage output, like, isn't that bad in the least bit. Yeah, man, overall, I don't think it's, like, S tier at all. I wouldn't even put him A+, but I do think he's A tier. You can toss him in pretty much any list, honestly. As long as you have some shooting, you can toss him in pretty much any list, and he should give you some value there. So, yeah, A, I think that's a fair place for him. Next up, we got Exalted Flamer. So this guy is a character. He has a very similar profile to the Burning Chariot for like half the cost. He's only 65 points, so pretty efficient again. He has 9-inch move, toughness 4, 6 wounds with a 4-up invul save. He also has the infantry keyword, so don't forget you can like move him through walls, potentially hide him behind walls and that sort of stuff. I will say his model's pretty big, especially with those flames sticking out, so it's not the easiest thing ever, but it is easier than like a big chariot, and unlike the chariot, you wouldn't have to worry about like getting around terrain, those sort of things. His output is identical, at least range-wise. Yeah, it's identical. So you still have the Ignores Cover, AP3, 3 damage attacks, so that's not bad at all. His melee's a lot worse, only has the Flamer mouths, only 4 attacks, strength 5, but no AP, a single damage, so definitely keep him out of melee if you could. Now his abilities, that's where this guy gets pretty interesting. So first of all, you can attach him to Flamers, which is definitely a route you could go. I think most people though, and myself included, I would just run him on his own. I don't think he does that much or like adds that much to them, especially now that you can't like advance and still do actions. Regardless though, so his first ability is Blazing Woodfire. While he's leading units, so Flamers, all their ranged weapons get the Assault keyword. That is interesting, with your 9-inch move and again being infantry, that does give you a little bit more range, especially on your 12-inch range Flamers, so it's not like the worst thing ever, but for 65 points, not really worth it. His other ability, though, that's the one I really like, so Flames of Change. In your shooting phase, after this model is shot, select one enemy unit, excluding monsters or vehicles that was hit by one or more of those attacks, on a 4-up until the end of your opponent's next turn, they are aflame. While a unit is aflame, you subtract 2 from their move and from their advance and charges. That can be such a big deal when it comes up. I've had bricks of like Possess get hit by like similar abilities. It sucks, dude. Not only your movement, but also your advance and charges. It really adds up, especially if it's like an advance and charging unit, which oftentimes for melee bricks at least, oftentimes that is the case. Now, it does only go off on a 4-up, so it's not something you like plan on or rely on. That said, when it does go off, it can be a really big deal. A lot of times your opponent has like a key turn, they were hoping to get their melee brick into there, you're playing freaking Tzeentch of all armies, so like you really don't want to get in melee, so it can, like, dude, it can save your ass from time to time. So it's kind of interesting. I myself, I didn't normally run the Exalted Flamer. I thought he gave up like Assassinate points too easily, and that is a downside. Definitely something to bear in mind. But looking at like recent GT winning lists, a lot of them have been bringing this guy along. And it's kind of interesting. Got me to like look into him a little bit more. I do think he's great for, like, again, action play, secondaries. He's relatively easy to hide, even though he's got the huge flame sticking out. Otherwise, he is pretty easy to hide. So I do think he has some value. Of all the characters in Daemons, he's one of the better ones, truthfully. And again, I would run him solo. I don't think he's that good attached to Flamers. I think he's best on his own. Overall, I think I'm going to put him in B tier. Yeah, 6 wounds with a 4-up invul save for only 65 points, 9-inch move, and the fly keyword. He has a lot of things, like, going for him. So, overall, I think B tier, I think he's just, like, solid. Ooh, alright, next up we got Soul Grinder. So of all the demons, next to maybe Slaanesh, I think he's like extremely important for Tzeentch. You don't have any melee whatsoever otherwise. I guess like technically you have Screamers, but they're really not the best at it. Well, this guy's the real deal. Well, first of all, he got a points break, surprisingly. I don't think anybody was expecting him to get like a points drop, but now he's down to 180, so that's, you know, that's good. His profile is fantastic. His stat line alone is like fantastic. So 8-inch move, toughness 11. He has a real armor save, so 3-up save and a 4-up invul. He also has 5 objective control, and that's the same as a Greater Demon, so that alone is like fantastic. Where he really pops off though, especially with Tzeentch, is his ranged options. So you still have the Harvester Cannon. 36-inch range, 3 shots, strength 10, minus 1 AP, 3 damage each. That combos well with like the Burning Chariot. That way you're still getting your armor piercing, even if somebody's in cover, so not too bad. And it's sort of like a universal, works into vehicles and like infantry. Now, where it really pops off, though, is his Tzeentch option. So, Warp Gaze. This is Blast, 48-inch range, only D3 shots, but strength 12, minus 2 AP, D6, plus 2 damage. Again, that combos really well with the Burning Chariot. You still get your AP, and there are ways to boost it even further. We have like a stratagem to give you plus 1 AP, potentially even reroll wounds. Again, he has really good melee, and that's like the main reason to bring this guy. He's gonna be like, he's like a keystone unit if you're going Mono God especially. So, Iron Claw, this is 5 attacks, strength 16, minus 3 AP, D6, plus 2 damage. So that's minimum 3, up to 8 damage each. That's the best in all of Tzeentch. On top of that, you can choose between the claw or the sword. I would go sword every single time, just more like high damage output. It is 3 attacks, strength 8, minus 2 AP, D6 damage. So that's what, 8 D6 or higher damage attacks going out. Again, you don't have any access to that otherwise when you're running Tzeentch. Now, it can be a little funky to get around the table, but we're playing Daemons, man. Just deep strike them if it's that big a deal. Truthfully, often I deploy him on the board, especially if I have Be'lakor along for the ride, who would also help make up for some of your melee damage output. He's not the best ever at 325 points, but he's not terrible either. And truthfully, I know I've like talked trash about Be'lakor a lot. For tournament play especially, I've been running him a bit more. There's a lot of really scary armies out there, and being able to like prevent yourself from getting shot out at 18 inches, it does have value. And with this guy's ranged output, you can actually like kite somebody, you can stay out of their 18-inch range and just shoot them like willy-nilly without being shot back, I do think it has value. On top of that, he does have Scuttling Walker, so each time he makes a normal or advanced move, you move over friendly monsters and vehicles. That's a gigantic deal, man. We're playing demons. You normally have like 4 to 6 to infinite greater demons and monsters, so that is like a pretty big deal on its own. On top of that, you move over terrain features that are 4 inches in height or less. Both of those come together to help make up for like, yeah, his awkward like size, his awkward just like model. So of all the mono gods, I think, yeah, he's like incredibly important. He's vital, man. He's practically an auto-include if you're going mono god especially. Even mixed, this is the best version of the Soul Grinder. Now having the warp gaze, that's just like so good, man. The blast keyword is pretty clutch too. Maybe there's like a big blob of Terminator or something like that. This guy's gonna eat him for lunch. I do think if you're going mono god especially, you bring at least 1, you probably consider 3. And yet again, he's the best version of the Soul Grinder. Soul Grinder's already a fantastic unit, like baseline in the index as it is. So I'm gonna put him S tier. I think too, do I put him above Flamers? I won't. I do think Flamers, they still give you better like scoring and mission play. Soul Grinder just gives you better like, just better like a profile to work with, better damage output, all that sort of stuff. But regardless, S tier, he's an auto-include all day, every day. Alright, next up, we're finally on the real characters, excluding Exalted Flamer. So just like every Chaos God, they got a boatload to choose from. I believe I have 8 in total. And to be upfront, I think like for their smaller characters, I think they have the best of all the Chaos Gods. Like most of them are like baseline usable, a lot of them are very competitive. So to start off, you got Changecaster. This guy's 60 points. He can be attached to pink horse. I believe he can attach some blue horse as well, but you would never do that. His profile is pretty bad, to be honest. So 6-inch move, only toughness 3, 3 wounds. He does have a 4-up pinball save, but otherwise he is like sniper food, so keep him kind of hidden away. His range output isn't bad at all, so if you go to focus mode, which you pretty much always do, although with this guy with only having 3 wounds, you gotta be careful there, but regardless, with the focus mode, it'd be devastating wounds, 18-inch range, 3 attacks, hit on 3s, strength 6, minus 2 AP, D3 damage. So that's awesome, man. You're getting like multi-damage attacks out there. Even if you don't go focus, it's still strength 5, minus 1 AP, D3 damage. So either way, you'll be killing like Marines, those sort of profiles. And melee is terrible, like never, yeah, don't use him in melee. His abilities are alright as well, so Changecaster. While he's leading a unit, so pink cores, all their ranged weapons get sustained hits 1. Again, their range output isn't that bad, man. It's basically like a boosted bolter. You're already getting, what, 20 attacks baseline, getting sustained on top of it. It's only an extra, like, 3 shots or so, but not the worst thing ever. Now, his other ability, this would be why you might be, like, tempted to bring him. So he has Storm of Mutating Sorcery. In your shooting phase, after this model is shot, select an enemy infantry, and they must take a battle shock test. Again, we have like stratagems that key off of that. There's other, if you go like mixed god, there's other units that key off of that, etc. So there are ways to like take advantage of the battle shocks. That said, overall, even though I like Tzeentch characters more, like for the most part, I don't think this guy is really that special. Being able to force the battle shock, that would be the big reason you bring him, because there is a style of list where, yeah, you just like, you're trying to force as many battle shocks as you can. It keys off with your army rule as well, so they'll be taking like D3 mortal wounds if they're in your Shadow of Chaos. But overall, he's not really the best. 60 points for the output, like it's okay output, it's not something I really like want to pay for. And again, sustained hits, not the best thing ever. I'm not sure if I'd put him like C tier or D tier. Truthfully, I hate to do it, but I think I'm gonna put him in D. He's not really a character I'd really consider for most lists. Ooh, next up though, so Fluxmaster, this guy puts him to shame. And in fact, you know what, honestly, I'll put him in trash tier because you guys are about to see. So Fluxmaster costs the same amount of points, yet literally everything except for his like range output, literally everything is better than the other guy. So first of all, again, 60 points, same cost. He has 12-inch move, toughness 4, 4 wounds, and the 4-up pinball save. Literally every single one of those is better than the other guy. His range output's identical, and again, his melee sucks, so you really don't want to do that. Where he really pops off, though, and where he's like really fun and actually becomes a valid choice, is his abilities. So Fluxmaster, while he's leading a unit, aka pink cores, anytime an attack of any kind, so whether ranged or melee comes in, you subtract 1 from the hit roll. Pink cores are already one of, if not the most resilient units in the game. Suddenly you're given -1 to hit no matter what. Dude, that's such a big deal. Even at 60 points, I think it's kind of worth it. It's not something you always do, but I do think, like, yeah, man, that has a boatload of value associated with it. On top of that, his other ability's not half bad either, so Altered Reality. Once per battle round, after a hit, wound, or saving throw for this model is made, you can change the result to a 6. So that's awesome, dude. You change it after you make the throw. He does have devastating wounds on his focus profile, so you can like guarantee the damage. Maybe it's like a big knight or something. You're willing to risk the hazardous. You're willing to risk it so as you can plink off the last wound or 2. Very much I like that. Overall, again, I think he's one of the best, how I was talking about Tzeentch, I think he's one of the best, like, singlet characters you can bring. Obviously, you attach him to, like, pinks, don't get me wrong, but he's one of the best, like, smaller characters. I guess that's what I mean to say. I'm not sure he's an auto-include, not at all. He is really fun to run, though. Like, can you imagine the, like, nigh on vulnerable pink horrors? I think just from, like, meme potential and that sort of stuff, that alone does make him, like, worth considering. Ooh, I'm not sure, do I put him B or A? Honestly, I'm excited to put him into A tier. I think that's fair. Again, you don't always bring him along, but when you do, he shouldn't disappoint. Speaking of meme potential, we got one of my favorite, like, models. They have the best background lore in the entire game, so the blue Scribes. These guys are pretty cheap. They're only 75 points, and their whole deal is just that they're lone operatives. That's like their entire purpose in life is to be a cheap lone opper with pretty fast profile. So they do have 12-inch move, toughness 4, 6 wounds with a 4-up pinball save. They also have 2 objective control for what that's worth. Like I mentioned, they're pretty cheap. They're only 75 points. That's one of the cheaper, like, lone operatives in the entire game. Definitely for, like, chaos. Now, their output is terrible. You absolutely do not rely on them for their output whatsoever. 4 attacks, only hit on 5s, strength 2, no AP, and a single damage, so it's like garbage tier. On top of that, his abilities aren't good either, so his first one, I don't even know how to say it, to Pteryx's Sorcerous Siphon. While an enemy unit is within 12 inches of this model, each time a model in that unit makes a psychic attack, subtract 1 from the wound roll. I guess if you're fighting like Thousand Suns, other demons that might come in handy, that sort of stuff. But again, he's a lone opera. You don't want to be within 12 inches of anybody anyways. His other ability, Sorcerous Barrages. At the end of your movement phase, roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches of this model. On a 2 to 3, they take 1 mortal wound. On a 4 to 5, they take d3. And on a 6, they suffer d6 mortal wounds. Yet again, he has lone operative. The last thing you want to do is get within, like, especially 6 inches of somebody. That said, I have used that before. You can, like, somebody deep struck into my backfield. They deep struck a few units, and I was able to use them just to plink a few wounds off him. He was gonna die anyway, so I thought it was, like, a fun thing to do. Overall, for, like, just being a lone opper, 75 points is very much worth it. You're basically paying solely for that stat line, and truthfully, 6 wounds with a 4-up pinball save, I don't think that's bad at all. I don't think he's fantastic either. He's got really stiff competition. We're about to see in a second. But I'm gonna put him, I'd put him either B, maybe even A tier, honestly. But for now, I'll put him in B, because almost always you are going to choose Changeling over him. We'll see that here in a moment. But I think B tier, I think that's a fair place for him. Next up, speaking of the Changeling, so this guy's been popular like all of 10th edition, even like recently. Pretty much every Demons list I see, they either bring this guy or Maskless Slanesh, at least if they're bringing a Lone Opera, and that is like the majority of lists. So he's only 90 points. Again, he does have Lone Operative. He also has Stealth. Those don't go together like the best. Obviously, you don't want your Lone Operas being shot, but when he does get shot, at least he'll be -1 to hit. I should say, too, your opponent will have like more hurdles than just that to go through, but we'll get to those here in a moment. His stat line's pretty like average, maybe even a little subpar, but it's like alright. Only 6-inch move, only T3, but he does have 5 wounds and a 4-up pinball save, so for Tzeentch at least, he's like relatively resilient. It's not the worst thing ever. His range output's really good, so if you go the focus mode, which you usually would, it's ignores cover, torrent. It is only 12-inch range, but D6 plus 3 attacks, strength 6, -1 AP, D3 damage. That's actually really good. That gives you like Overwatch play. If somebody like deep strikes next to you, you have a pretty good odds of like killing at least a few bases. Even Marine profiles are gonna be kind of afraid of this guy, so I do like that. Like, yeah, I like that a fair bit. Now, his melee's pretty terrible. It's 3 attacks, hit on 4s, strength 4, -1 AP, D3 damage. The D3 damage is, like, interesting. Maybe you kill, like, a Marine profile or two. But again, you're a lone operative, so you really don't want to be in melee if you can help it. That said, he isn't helpless if he does get in melee because he has one of the most, like, unique and just, like, fun, like, rules in the entire game. So, Formless Whore. Each time an enemy unit wishes to select this model, whether it's ranged or melee, they must first take a Battle Shock test. If they fail, not only are they battle shocked, but they cannot target this guy at all. I've totally had that come up. It was a blob of what? I think it was Berserkers, dude. They surrounded this guy. They were going to eat him for breakfast. Nope, you're now battle shocked. And guess what? On top of that, you've taken D3 mortal wounds. I think it's fantastic, man. He's already got Lone Operative. He's got Stealth, and now you have to take a Battle Shock on top of that? If your opponent's, like, on an objective or trying to flip you off an objective, for example, a lot of times they won't even target this guy. They don't want to risk it. They don't want to, like, risk having OC0. It's such a big deal, man. And again, it's really fun, very unique. His other ability helps with not dying too, so Mischief and Confusion. At the start of your opponent's shooting phase, select an enemy unit within 12 inches invisible. You roll a die. On a 2 to 5, they subtract 1 from the hit roll. On a 6, they cannot shoot at all. So again, guys, Lone Operative, Stealth, you gotta take a Battle Shock test. On top of that, you're -1 to hit no matter what. Now, otherwise, you don't really want to be within 12 inches of people if you can help it, but maybe if they deep strike in, potentially enforce them not to shoot at all. I think all those come together to make like an ultra resilient, ultra just like fun model, man. I love the Changeling seriously so much. He's so like memey and just like entertaining to put on the table. All in all, honestly, truthfully, I think he goes S tier. I think he's one of the best lone operatives in the entire game. Before they changed up the ally rules, you used to see him with like CSM all the time. He was like incredibly popular there. Very much, I think you should consider throwing him in pretty much every single list. Whether you're doing mono god or mixed demons, I think he's like worthwhile in most lists. S tier, I think he belongs there. Next up, we got Fateskimmer. So this is like the biggest surprise of the Dataslate changes. When they dropped him in price, he was already fantastic as it is. Now he's under 100 points. He's only 95 points, and for that, you get an incredibly like efficient profile. So first of all, 12-inch move, toughness 7, 9 wounds with a 4-up invul save. He also has 3 objective control. By the way, you can attach him with Screamers. You don't always do that, but very much like you can. That is like a valid way to go, especially if you go a brick of Screamers. Now you're rolling 7 die for your mortal wound ability. I think that does have some power behind it. His range output isn't bad at all. If you go the focus version, it's Dev Wounds, 18-inch range, 3 attacks, strength 6, minus 2 AP, D3 damage. So yet again, you're getting multi-damage attacks going out there, not bad in the least bit. His melee isn't terrible either. He has his Herald Combat Weapon, that one kind of sucks, but he does get Screamer Bites on top of that. So that's 6 extra attacks, hit on 4s, strength 6, minus 2 AP, 2 damage each. So he can still hold his own whether it's shooting or melee. I like both of those, where he's the best though. So first of all, his first ability is like, alright, he has Fateskimmer. While he's leading a unit, so Screamers, all their melee weapons get lethal hits. That's actually a pretty big deal. You're hitting on 4s, so like you need as much like extra like efficiency as you can get for these guys. They really aren't that good in melee. Adding lethals on top of it, that means you can go into anything. You can go into like big knights, anything like that, and you still get at least a little bit of efficiency. On top of that, though, and the big reason you do bring him is his other ability. So, Rider of the Immaterial Winds, that's an awesome name. So, once per battle, at the end of your opponent's turn, if this model is not within engagement range, you can put it in reserves. Don't forget, we're demons, so that means you can deep strike everything. You got the 3-inch deep strike stratagem on top of that. So, you deep strike this guy and 6 freaking Screamers, like wherever you want, within 3 inches of somebody. That's probably not the way to go. You'd probably do the normal 6-inch deep strike. Hope you get your charge, like, successfully. That is a pretty big deal. Essentially saves you a command point from having to do the Realm of Chaos on its own. At 95 points, I dare say this guy's like an auto-include. He's not really, but he's really damn close, man. Being able to go back in reserves, such a big deal. Being 95 points and having 9 wounds with a 4-up invul save, that is incredibly good as well. All in all, I think, yeah, man, I think it's like A+. Yeah, I think A+ is a fair place for him. I think, too, would I put him above Screamers? Ooh, that's tempting. I think they're about equal, truthfully, so I'll just leave him where he is. But A+, I think that's a great place for him. Ooh, alright, we're finally on the Greater Demons. So to start off, we got Lord of Change. So I'll tell you guys right off the bat, this is one of my favorite Greater Demons. I've had so much success with this guy. He gives you good range output. Now, obviously, if you're going like mono Tzeentch, like, yeah, you got a bunch of it, but he has high strength range output. He's basically like anti-tank from across the table. That's not something that demons normally have like much access to. Regardless though, so pretty efficient profile for the cost. Baseline needs 260 points. You get 12-inch move with Fly, so that's fantastic. You can like always get line of sight. Toughness 10, he's got 18 wounds with a 4-up invul save, so he's pretty resilient. Like, technically, he's like the most fragile Greater Demon, but he really isn't. He's still got a 4-up invul and 18 wounds. He also has 5 objective control on top of that, so all those stats are fantastic. On top of that, you can give him either Rod of Sorcery or the Baleful Sword. Don't ever give him the sword. Don't ever let me catch you doing that. The Rod of Sorcery is fantastic, though. Now, I should mention, you're always giving him an enhancement. Like, hands down, no questions asked. You give this guy an enhancement. It's, like, vital. He gets it. It gives him +2 strength and +6-inch range. Both of those together are, like, vital. They're like a necessity. On top of that, and we're going to go over his abilities first, because they're really important to know, and they do play in the enhancement as well. So first of all, he's got Demon Lord of Tzeentch. While a friendly Tzeentch demon is within 6 inches, so this includes himself, each time they make a ranged attack, add 1 to the strength characteristic. So when you have the enhancement, that boosts him up to strength 12 on his main weapon, strength 11 on the Rod of Sorcery, so both of those fantastic. That means even like Land Raiders are threatening, all that. Obviously though, it helps the rest of your army as well. So Pink Horror's going to strength 5 minus 1 AP a single damage, like that's not bad at all. Again, your Flamer's going to strength 5, all those are big deals. Anything T9 and below, suddenly you're able to threaten, even with your like measly like smaller units. On top of that, though, he's also got Master of Magics. In your shooting phase, select one of the following abilities. Either ignores cover, lethal hits, or sustain D3. Until the end of the turn, you're bolt to change, so your main weapon gets that ability. Now, it really is a toss-up between either ignores cover or sustained hits D3. How I normally do it, if I can guarantee they get to a 5-up or a 6-up save, I almost always choose the ignores cover. Otherwise, if it's like infantry or they got a really good invul, anything like that, then obviously you go sustained hits D3. I bet if you do the math hammer, I bet if you get in like Unicrunch, sustained is probably better in most situations, but do not be afraid to use the ignores cover, especially, and I do this all the time, probably half the time I shoot with them, especially if you combine it with the stratagem that gets you an additional +1 AP. Both of those together, pretty big deal. Now, when you do use it, you have a really good weapon to use it with. So, Bolt of Change, when you go focus mode, of course you always do, it'd be 24-inch range with the enhancement, 9 shots, hidden on 2s, strength 12, minus 2 AP, D3 damage. So the D3 damage may not seem that much, but dude, you're putting out 9 attacks, potentially with sustained hits D3 on top of that. And that's basically anti-everything. You can go into vehicles, you can go into elites, you can go into chaff, like you name it, man, they're gonna die. On top of that, you got the Rod of Sorcery. So again, don't ever bring the sword, always bring the rod. This would go to 18-inch range, and this would give you additional 6 attacks, hidden on 2s, strength 11, minus 1 AP, D3 damage. Again, when you use the stratagem for additional plus 1 AP, that means that you're not like getting screwed out of the cover saves or anything like that. You still get your AP on it. For real, on average, he will take out like a Predator, definitely take out Rhinos, anything like that. On average, you'll take him out. Even bigger vehicles like Land Raiders, that sort of stuff, you'll plink him down a pretty good amount when using this guy, even just at range, man, so from across the board. Now, melee is no slouch either. It's not the best ever, but it's not like terrible. He can definitely hold his own in melee. So it's 5 attacks, hit on 3s, strength 6, minus 1 AP, 3 damage each. So again, even like Terminators, those sort of things, like yes, you'd have trouble with the armor saves, but regardless, any hit that does go through is going to kill like a base each time. Even vehicles, just the other night, I fought Chaos Knights, and he helped me finish off some War Dogs. All in all, Lord of Change, like I mentioned in the beginning, he's one of my favorite Greater Demons. He's basically like, yeah, dude, he's sort of like a Keeper of Secrets who does their damage from across the table. Now, that said, it is a toss-up between the two. You could definitely, like, and between, like, all the Greater Demons, in fact. I don't think it's the, while he's my favorite Greater Demon, that doesn't mean it's the best Greater Demon. Let me make that clear. I do think Great Unclean One's better, probably Bloodthirster's better. Like, you got a lot of options. I would say he's probably equal with Keeper of Secrets, though, either or. And again, he brings something the army's, like, sorely needing. Really good ranged output. All in all, truthfully, like you guys probably saw coming, I'm putting him S tier, and truthfully, I'm putting him above the Soul Grinder. I think especially if you're going Mono God, but even Mixed God, I think he's an auto-include, at least one of them. I'm not sure if you bring multiples. I think you would go like one Lord of Change and the rest Soul Grinders, but regardless, toss him in your list if you haven't already, and just see how he does from across the table. Again, he gives you ranged anti-tank, something we're sorely lacking. By the way, while we're here, let's do some house cleaning. So, I realize as we're going through it, I love the Flamers so much, and while I myself think they're auto-include, I gotta realize not everybody has the same, like, playstyle as me. I'm big on, like, scoring, getting a lot of units out there that are kind of quick and able to do actions and whatnot. I think, honestly, what I should do, I'm gonna put them down to A+ tier. I think that's actually a way better spot for the Flamers, because you don't have to bring them, and obviously, like, Lord of Change, Soul Grinder, Changeling, obviously they have more value than even the Flamers bring along, so, hopefully it's not too controversial. I'm, like, changing my list towards the end, but regardless, I'm gonna put him down to A+ instead. Alright, finally, we're on to Kairos Fateweaver. So Kairos, he kind of got side-graded. He had a couple nerfs, actually. So first of all, the indirect nerf hit him. He used to be able to hit on 3s when it was out of line of sight. Now goes to 4s. It's not the worst thing ever, and it definitely still has, like, use. Maybe you're fighting, like, Interceptor, something with the Interceptor ability, so you can't deep strike within 12 inches. That's a huge deal when you're playing Demons. This guy should be able to, like, help, like, directly counter that. It does have Blast on top of it. Before we get to that, though, so 270 points, he's a little more expensive than Lord of Change. He does have a slightly boosted profile, so it's identical, except you have 20 wounds. 20 wounds with a 4-up invul save, that's pretty damn resilient, so that's not bad in the least bit. On top of that, he has Infernal Gateway. So this is Blast, Indirect. When you go Focus, like you always do, it's 24-inch range with D3 plus 6 shots. So average of 8 up to 9. Hits on 2s, Strength 10 if you're next to Lord of Change, which you always would be. Minus 3 AP, D3 damage. So that's awesome, man. When it gets up to Strength 10, that means you got more anti-vehicle. The minus 3 AP is fantastic, especially if you use the stratagem. Then you go into minus 4 AP at range. That's some of the best in the entire army. And then again, it being Blast and Indirect, that's a pretty big deal, man. It helps you deal with scouts, anybody trying to hide behind terrain. Maybe they're like doing actions, that sort of stuff. So it does have value to it. In melee, he's way better than the Lord of Change. He is no slouch in melee. So, Staff of Tomorrow, it is 5 attacks, only hits on 3s, but strength 8, minus 2 AP, 2d3 damage. So that's average of 4 up to 6 damage. So that's not bad in the least bit. His abilities are pretty awesome, so one head looks forward. Each time you target a Tzeentch Demon within 6 inches, you roll a die. If it's greater than the battle round number, you gain a CP back. So what I love for that is first turn, sight unseen, I will always use the Realm of Chaos. Almost always he's right next to a Lord of Change, so I just pick both of them up. That means that you can get like pretty much guaranteed line of sight on whatever target you want. So I do think that is pretty valuable. That's like the only form of regen you have in the Tzeentch army. On top of that, his other ability either got nerfed or got upgraded, depending on how you look at it. So now it works just like everybody else. You have a 12-inch aura, any stratagem of any kind, not only battle tactics, but any stratagem, they cost 1 more command point. Now, it is questionable. This guy's mainly like a range machine, but again, he's not that bad in melee, and he's very resilient, and often when you're running demons, a lot of times you have like Bloodthirsters, you got Bellicor, you got much other like way deadlier, way scarier stuff like nearby, so a lot of times he won't get like, yeah, he won't get picked on. Don't forget too that you got the Deep Strike stratagem, so theoretically you cover like most of your opponent's army with that anti-command point stratagem, so for sure, I personally, I think it kind of got upgraded, and I don't think it's the worst thing ever to get him like in the thick of things. I definitely think he can gain some value there, especially if fighting like Tyranids are pretty crazy with their abilities. Anybody's bringing like captains, that sort of stuff, like you will see that a lot, and Kairos, he helps counter that. Unfortunately, though, I think compared to all the other Greater Demons, I think he's one of the worst. That doesn't mean he's bad. Greater Demons are, like, fantastic. They're some of the best, like, most efficient profiles in the game. But when you compare him to the others, especially with his price, yeah, I think, unfortunately, he falls a little behind. Like I said, that doesn't mean he's bad, though. And for sure, his aura, I really do like the aura. The making stratagems cost more. Certain matchups is going to be clutch. Like I said, Tyranids, Chaos Space Marines are going to hate it. Anybody with captains, anything like that. And again, you could build, like, yeah, man, you could build your army around it. Just get him in the thick of things and just mess with your opponent. All in all, though, unfortunately, again, we have way better options, way more efficient profiles to choose from, so I'm just going to B tier. He's not bad at all, he's solid all around, but again, I'd way rather bring, like, Great Unclean One, Keeper of Secrets, Lord of Change, pretty much all of those. I'd look at them before I brought Kairos. If you're going Mono God, though, then yes, very much like toss him in. Why not, man? But otherwise, again, the other Greater Demons, just a little bit better. Alright, well that's the list. Let's see, is there anything I want to change? I already did make the change with the Flamers. I sincerely do. Like, dude, I'm so big on them. They're so fantastic for scoring. I could see the argument that Screamers are better, but in my opinion, or at least in my experience, Flamers tend to work out a little better. They're just, like, a little easier to hide. They don't have the big tails, all that sort of stuff. And I like their Flamer more than the melee on the Screamers. Otherwise, though, yeah, I think it's a decent list. I think it's fair. I would love to hear your guys' opinions. If I overrated or underrated something, do not be afraid to say. I always say, and I really mean it, man, it's not just for me, it's for other people to learn. There's a lot of people like getting into demons, especially recently after the Dataslate changes, so don't be afraid to share your opinion. I love reading everybody's comments. By the way, don't be afraid to ask any questions. If you need help with the list, anything, I'm more than happy to help. As usual, if you guys haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing, especially if you watch this long. Like, if you don't mind, hit that icon down there. It should only take a moment. Again, I got to send a shout out to all the channel supporters, so Nick, Tim, Sellers, Oregon Lady, all you guys, thank you so much for supporting what I'm doing. If anybody else would care to support the channel, I will post the Patreon down below, and you can become a member through YouTube as well. Either way, this is a really fun video to make. Like I said, man, I have fallen so much in love with Tzeentch lately. I think he is one of the better, like, Chaos Gods overall. Either way, though, best of luck out there, guys, and remember, death to the false emperor.